Hello and welcome back to the Astro Read. We are your hosts, Stella and Nayeli. This podcast is all about astrology and celebrity news and how you can use astrology in your everyday life.
Welcome back to our current subscribers and hello to all our new viewers tuning in today. If you're new and you like our content, please feel free to subscribe to the Astro Read. We're getting close to 100 subscribers and we've been around for about a year and we definitely want to add to the community. So by continuing to gain subscribers, it allows us to continue making this content, and your helpful comments give us ideas on future episodes to consider and also gives us a pulse on what you're liking about our episodes or even not liking. So for this episode, we're going to be analyzing a past celebrity couple. This sort of reemerging, I think, ever since kind of the aftermath of the case between Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. And this couple that we're going to analyze, well, this past couple would be Marilyn Manson and evanrachelwood. I think Marilyn Manson and Johnny Depp, I think they're friends. So yeah, there's something about that past couple and this past couple that's just very connected. And similar to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, in this case, the female in the past couple, evanrachelwood, has mentioned abusive behavior that Marilyn Manson had towards her when they were dating some years ago. And so with this episode, we're just going to dive in a little bit deeper into these two celebrities and see are any of the allegations potentially true, or what are the indications in the natal chart that kind of show how Marilyn Manson and evanrachelwood may be as people, and how they may be in a romantic type of situation. So Stella, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I think this might be another Johnny Depp situation where we're jumping the gun on criticizing Marilyn Manson just because of the nature of the type of artist that he's been. Whatever you do or don't believe about him, he's been a person of controversy, and we'll talk about those indications of controversy in this chart. But at the end of the day, is he really this? Because it might be more of, if you haven't already watched our episode on Britney Spears, where we were kind of like, there's something else going on in here. What with Marilyn Manson is someone who is taking advantage of society's, like the edge of society, the very corners of society that we ignore, whether it's sexually or emotionally or in terms of how you present yourself as a person. And he's pushing the envelope, and he's always been that way. That since the very beginning, every video, every single thing, with the types of themes he explores. Before we even had, what was it, Mr. Gray, there was Marilyn Manson pushing the envelope on pseudo-sexual type of energy within your relationship. And those types of, whether you consider them dark or not is up to you, but darker themes in sexuality and how it's being explored in the human psyche. It's very present in his chart, so that's interesting. But it's also something that, like, anyone could freely take advantage of and utilize against him, which is something that, in retrospect, for those of you who live alternative lives, let's say, be careful who you trust. Be careful who you let into your life, because this could very well be the case of someone he's on the edge anyway. If I just push the envelope and me to him, maybe I could get him canceled, whether it's vindictive or not. But allegedly, evanrachelwood has used her relationship with Johnny Depp to gain access to full custody of her child. This is all allegedly, and you can go and research this yourself and look it up. But unfortunately, those documents that she was presenting, basically saying she was afraid of her relationship or previous relationship with Marilyn Manson, and that could be a problem for her, and that's why she needs whatever with him. And unfortunately, in the custody battle, she presented documents that may or may not be true. We don't know yet. No one's raised questions about it, so I don't want to speculate. And this is all allegedly, and this is for entertainment purposes only. But this is what has been reported. So what we want to be careful of here is she capable of doing this to someone in order to obtain access to her child? And then does that bolster her ability to then force the issue? Does that bolster her ability to then gain access to her child, whatever the case may be? And is Marilyn Manson really somebody that she's afraid of, or is she using that image that he has in order to gain some sort of profit or some sort of status, because now she's got an HBO special and she's had a lot of attention thrown at her, and there's a lot of different things going on in the background that we're just not aware of that can be gained from throwing these allegations around that really do have consequences and really do harm people, which is why I believe Marilyn Manson is considering or has already filed some sort of motion for defamation in the same vein as Johnny Depp has done. But this is something something that is very serious. It's already being battled in court, and we are just two astrologers analyzing charts to see first, is Marilyn Manson capable of doing this? Or is his chart really just someone who is trying to push the envelope in our society? And he's found himself, unfortunately, be his own image being used against him. And on the other hand, is evanrachelwood someone who, is demonstrating similar behaviors Amber Heard, or in any way sort of creating some sort of scenario that may not have happened, or has she really been wrong? And has she gone through the ringer and is trying to really feel and create security for herself? So we're going to see. But those are all of the allegations that have been coming up in the news. We have no previous knowledge or connection with any of these people, but we will analyze their chart.
Yeah, for sure. And then with Evan-Rachel Wood and her custody over her son, I didn't realize that was involved, but like with her son, the father of her son is her ex-husband, Jamie Bell. So is that how it came about, that she started like bringing up this marriage?
Yeah, there was
again?
I don't believe that's what it came about, but there was some sort of document presented,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. That's the
Yeah.
allegation, and that was not necessarily true because she was claiming that like the FBI was involved, and that I don't think that they were or something. I don't know. I have no idea, but that's what the allegations are. That she had claimed that some agency had been involved in protecting her, and the agency has not corroborated it. And Marilyn Manson has found the evidence that he hasn't corroborated it, and she either may lose her child if it gets pushed even further. Not lose her child, but lose her custody. And there may be other legal consequences for falsifying documents for an agency of any kind.
Yeah.
There's many consequences tied to what she did in the court case. I have no idea what's the nitty gritty because I haven't really read into it. This is all stuff that I've been following the story from the news and from what's been reported. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think similar to Amber Heard, Evan-Rachel Wood, some years ago, like probably a few years back, probably like 3 years ago at this point, or maybe a little bit longer, she had either had released or had an interview that was placed in an article where she talked about having a past abusive relationship, but she didn't name the person. I think a lot of people assumed she was talking about Marilyn Manson because, like that was such a big relationship for her that she had at around the time that she was expressing when she had this abusive relationship, but she never named him out. But I even assumed that it was Marilyn Manson she was talking about. And then some years later, she like actually identified it and was like, Marilyn Manson was the person I had this abusive relationship with. So yeah, it's reminiscent of the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp kind of thing. And who knows how it'll escalate and if it will turn into a defamation trial that's similar to what Johnny Depp and Amber Heard have had. Is Marilyn Manson capable of being abusive? It's tough because looking at Marilyn Manson's chart, I do think he is a person that's naturally going to be pushing the envelope, and that's a big part of his existence. But then I also think there are indications that show that he's a good person. Like he's somebody that people care about. And you can see that like he has really close friendships in the music industry. People seem to really like him and he seems to be seen as a good friend. But at the same time, I noticed things about his chart that could show potential not good behavior in a relationship. So the main notable thing in Marilyn Manson's chart that's really the foundation for how he appears and who he is, his mystic rectangle. So Marilyn Manson is another celebrity that has a mystic rectangle, and a mystic rectangle is a rare configuration. Most people don't even have it. And so for those that are not familiar, a mystic rectangle is when at least 4 planets or like points on a natal chart create a rectangle. So with Marilyn Manson, his mystic rectangle includes his moon in Leo, which, the moon in Leo can make him very romantic, but also like very much me about his emotional needs. It also includes his Uranus in Libra, so that can make him very unconventional when it comes to what he thinks is right, what he thinks is justice, or even how he approaches relationships. It also includes his Jupiter in Libra, which Jupiter in Libra can give him luck in relationships or bring him luck when he enters a romantic partnership or any kind of partnership. It includes his Chiron in Pisces and his North Node in Aries, I believe as well. So Chiron represents his inner wound, North Node represents his soul purpose. So with his inner wound in Pisces, I haven't analyzed Chiron in Pisces very much, but I can imagine it's a very deep inner wound. Pisces is the last sign in astrology. It's the 12th sign. And so he might have wounds about maybe giving too much to others, even. With his North Node in Pisces, his sole purpose is all about having a sense of his own independence, being able to assert for himself and having his own independence outside of a relationship in order to ultimately enter a healthy relationship. And the mystic rectangle, last but not least, includes his Mercury in Aquarius. And I think the Mercury in Aquarius is what really makes Marilyn Manson Marilyn Manson. Aquarius is an unconventional sign. It's a sign that's about breaking free and like doing things your own way and having some freedom with how you are. And so how he communicates and how he approaches his own brand is probably very Mercury in Aquarius, like where he's going to do what he wants to do. And so all of that together, it connects to how he's seen by others and who he is. So like whenever somebody has a mystic rectangle in their chart, it pretty much acts as a vortex. Like everything that's connected to that mystic rectangle and within it just becomes the sole purpose of that person's life. It becomes such a focus of a person's life. And it could be good if it includes all the important parts of the natal chart anyway, or it could be a challenge if there's such a focus on the qualities of the mystic rectangle where it neglects other parts of the natal chart that need attention. I think Marilyn Manson has some really tough Moon, Mars, and Saturn placements and aspects that make it where he could maybe be controlling. Let me see what he has for Pluto. Because Pluto is opposite his Chiron. His Uranus is conjunct Pluto, which is interesting. Could mean that it could even add to his transformational field where he always has to transform as a person or in his image. With Mars, let me see what aspects he has there. He has Venus trine Mars, which is a very sweet aspect. It could make him very charming. It could make him really love or combine desire and love. But his moon is also square Mars. So his actions and his emotional state may not be in sync. I think the main thing for me that I see as like pretty much a red flag is his Chiron, with it being in the 8th house and in Pisces. I just think both very deep sign and house. With Chiron and Pisces, he probably gives a lot or maybe has a hard time really like surrendering to life. And then with it being in the 8th house, he might be very controlling in relationships, or he may have had, and this is all like, this is just entertainment purposes only, disclaimer that we always say for our celeb astrology episodes. This is just us looking at celebrities' natal charts and giving our interpretations. We don't know these celebrities. We don't know what is 100% true or not, but with a Chiron in the 8th house, it's likely that Marilyn Manson had some past sexual abuse or could engage in it without really meaning to. So there's those to me, especially his Chiron, really points to me as like the darkest part, in my opinion, of his chart.
Yeah. And Venus also being in the 8th house also indicates someone who has maybe a more dark sexual nature.
Mm.
But the fact that it's Venus in Pisces, it's not so much dark sexual nature in the negative. It's more exploratory. It's more open. It's more flow.
Mm.
So as he has throughout his career really ascended and really challenged everything, he's got Saturn in the 9th house, as well as North Node in the 9th house. So really his purpose in life is to basically mess with people. That's what I would say, especially with it being in Aries. It's like Aries has this energy of not thinking about the consequences, off the cuff type of situations. If we're going to do something, we're going to do something and just throw it out there, mud on the wall. I don't want to say the other word, and just see what sticks. And like his whole personality and persona is about the edge of society, pushing us to our edge, pushing us to the next level, or even to a new level of interpretation, a new level of acceptance. And people who dark grunge, makeup, and heavy metal and everything else, like they should be accepted as well. His whole life philosophy is about what those Aries type of energy people, and accepting whether it's their darkness and their dark side inside of themselves, inside of their soul, or whether it's portraying themselves a certain way, how they would like to be seen. He's always pushed the envelope. But does that necessarily mean that someone who, yes, has Venus in Pisces, yes, has Saturn in the 9th house in Aries, or even North Node in Aries, does that mean that person could choose to be abusive? Or doubt that, especially since you have Saturn opposing, or really not really an exact opposition, but Saturn is in the opposite sign of Jupiter. And Jupiter in the 3rd house, especially in Libra, indicates someone who is going to have a lot of luck, is going to have a lot of wealth, is going to have someone who really looks at himself in a higher level to really challenge the status quo, especially when it comes to Libra. But he also may be someone who accepts a lot of BS, because again, Libra energy is about that balancing act within your relationships. And so how does he interpret that? And then he has Moon in Leo, which is another indication of someone who might be a softie at the end of the day. Like he really loves love. He really loves to be engaged in loving situations. He might be someone who gives of himself excessively, and of himself is someone who is looking to have someone who will melt into his universe, let's say. That's a really good description for that type of energy. And then, of course, the sun is in his sixth house in Capricorn. So a lot of it has to do with his own stability and with building stability in his life. So these actions that he's taking, whether it's to be outlandish, whether it's to be pushing the envelope, it's about creating financial and wealth stability in his life. So I'm not saying that he's doing it all for the money, because I don't want to say he's like a sellout or something like that, because that's the ultimate insult for someone like that. But he utilizes his darker notes, his darker tendencies to enjoy his life, to build wealth in his life, to create something unique for others to enjoy, to have a sort of life balance where he can fully express who he is, especially with the sixth house being a lot of not just like your work-life balance, but how you work and the way that you work. And that's really highlighted in his life as something that's important to him with this sixth house sun. But Mercury also being in the seventh house of Aquarius, he might not be as sensitive to love as well. He might be thinking like he's going to do the right thing and it's going to be about doing the right thing, but he's not going to take other people's CRAP. You know what I'm saying? Especially with Mercury being in Aquarius, it's all about that air sign energy of off the cuff energy. The maybe it's not as serious as he thought it was, or maybe love is not as serious as he thought it was. He's always going to be a gentleman, especially with Venus in Pisces and Mars in Scorpio. Deep, energetic, not even masculine because they're feminine signs, but like that soft masculine energy, as opposed to someone who's going to be going hard and being more physical with someone or angry all the time. He might be someone who looks to compromise more, especially Mars is in its own sign in Scorpio in the fourth house. He's going to be someone who wants a little bit more maybe harmony in his house, just because he lives in chaos all the time. You know what I'm saying? He's going to want someone who will strategize with him and build a life and motivated to build a life with someone. And evanrachelwood for a long time was that person. But of course, not that there might be other stories about her, but it's not like it has been easy for her ex to deal with her when it comes to their custody. It's not been easy for Marilyn Manson to deal with her when it comes to the allegations she's thrown at him. And especially since now it's come to light that some of the things that she's done, whether it's been to convince people to say things about him, or to allegedly, or to go out there and write that article, or very much in the step of someone who just lost their defamation lawsuit. And it's, would you be willing to go to the edge? And I think if we go to evanrachelwood's chart, which is where we disagree, she has a lot more indications of someone who is more focused on how she's going to advance in her career. If Amber Heard was a Gemini rising, she would have Venus in the 10th house. And this person also has Venus in the 10th house, indicating she is going to rise with other people. She's going to rise with her lover's energy. So whether she's someone who is going to be supported by her significant other, or someone whose relationship is going to be elevating her status financially or otherwise, especially since Sun and Mars are in there, she's very motivated by her career and what it means to be in her standing. And as was the case, as we saw with Amber Heard, if you go back to that episode, a lot of that energy was around whether or not this new allegation would help me elevate my status. When she connected with the ACLU to give her more credibility, when she had some lawyers redact a lot of the information that marked directly to him. But unfortunately, it was like even more so her own actions, because she has, no, we're not analyzing Amber's chart, but she has Mercury in Aries, which was something that was difficult for her. But this person has Mercury in Libra in the 11th house. So she's going to end at 0 degrees. So she is learning how to communicate about her struggles in love on a public level. And whether or not they're true, it could be that she's more focused on her career and what it means to have these allegations, and what it means, what it's meant to many people who have truthfully spoken against the Me Too movement, and whether or not to take advantage of it. Then we have Chiron in the 7th house. In Gemini, again, another Chiron in Gemini person. Is this the love that I want? Is this the type of energy that I want in my love life? Does this person deserve me, etc. type of energy? And that's opposing Uranus. So it could be any sort of result when it comes to her. And of course, Moon is in its own house in the 4th house in Pisces, but it's not in its own sign. And so them overlapping in their synastry, that meant that sort of his wounds and his love life met up with her emotional life. That's how they were really able to connect in some sort of way. But ultimately, their downfall came because Saturn and Jupiter are also in the same house of Aries.
Mm,
So his misfortunes were her good fortune.
mm.
And that's where synastry is so important to know, even before you're with someone, but definitely when you retroactively analyze the charts. Like, why is she utilizing him to take advantage and elevate herself? Now she's going to obviously get some sort of notoriety for the HBO special and everything else. And so it just makes her look better. You know what I'm saying? The sign that Saturn is in is the same sign where her Jupiter is. So her good fortune is his misfortune. And that's what they would bring out in each other, even in their relationship. Like, maybe she might be someone who in their relationship might have been very happy when something bad happened to him, and that's good. You deserve that. Whereas he's struggling with his Chiron in Pisces, like, I don't deserve that. I deserve someone who loves me, who takes care of me, and I've given too much to this person to be treated this way. And that's questions that he's going through. But yeah, anyway, that's why I believe it might be the other way around.
I think when it comes to Evan Rachel Wood and Marilyn Manson, it's like a lot of eighth house energy that drew them together. Evan Rachel Wood has her vertex point in the eighth house. So the vertex point represents where one has karmic situations that they can't control, that just like come about, and it's in her eighth house. And then Marilyn Manson's Chiron, so his inner wounds are in the eighth house. So it's almost like he was like karmically meant to meet her to either agitate or heal his wounds. And for her, it's like she was karmically meant to connect with Marilyn Manson in a sexual or very bonded way. And Evan Rachel Wood's Vesta, which Vesta is the asteroid of focus, is also in the eighth house. And again, that's where Manson's Chiron is in. I think they're both, this is a whole other side thing that could happen in a later episode with other celebrities, but I think both Marilyn Manson and Evan Rachel Wood are very psychic. They're very intuitive and they're both very psychic. I didn't even get into really diving into that when I looked at the charts, but I was able to see very strong indicators of that. It was almost like this karmic love that maybe wasn't meant to stay as a romantic, stable relationship. Playing devil's advocate over Marilyn Manson, is he capable of the abuse that's being alleged against him? I don't know, but he's definitely not a perfect person. But nobody's perfect. But with him, he definitely has tendencies to be temperamental. He has really tough Mars aspects. So his Mars, the planet of action, it's square his moon, which represents emotions. It's also in tough aspect with Mercury, the planet of thought and communication. His Mars is in the third house, which can make him very aggressive in his communication. His Saturn is in Aries, which Saturn is the planet of restraint, and Aries is the sign of ignition. So you put them both together and it's just like this tug and pull. And then he also has Pluto retrograde in his chart, which can manifest in different ways. The more evolved version is if somebody has Pluto retrograde, they would be more in tune to their psychological depths. But if somebody's not evolved and has Pluto retrograde, they might have very self-destructive, angry behavior. And then on top of that, his Neptune is in tough aspect with his ascendant. So you've got the planet of illusion in tough aspect with how he comes across to people. So that could mean that people don't really see him as he really is, or it could mean that he purposely does not share himself in the most authentic way. So it's hard to tell. It really depends on the free will and how somebody comes across. There's different red flags with Marilyn Manson. It's hard to know. It can go either way. He's definitely a complicated individual, and that could lead to difficulty in either experiencing relationships or how he may conduct himself in a relationship. On the other hand, with Evan Rachel Wood, when I was looking at her chart, I was literally weighing the pros and cons. What are the good things about her? And what are the things that are challenging? I think with Evan Rachel Wood, her weakest element is air. And so air is the element that connects to judgment and logic. So she may not be as logical in how she approaches things. And then on top of that, the fixed mode is the weakest modality. So that could mean that she may not be as grounded. So she might be more like led, even though she has a lot of earth energy in her chart with her stellium in Virgo, she might at the end of the day really be led by her drive and what she wants and her emotions, as opposed to judgment and seeing what's fair, even though she may portray somebody that's seeking justice, as shown by a lot of indicators in her chart. I think when I look at Evan Rachel Wood's chart, I think she was a girl that did or still has daddy issues. And she was rebellious against her parents, like a lot of teenagers are, but her rebellion ended up leading her to this era that she had with Marilyn Manson. And I think she was gullible in a lot of ways. She was really young when she was with Marilyn Manson. I forget how many years they were together, but I think they started dating when she was like 17, 18 years old. She was really young. And so regardless of—
18 and he was 36, I think. 18
Yeah,
and he
so
was 36.
Yeah, so 18 years apart age difference. And then on top of that, she was so young. So regardless of Marilyn Manson's good intentions or not, or how much he loves or loved Evan Rachel Wood, at the end of the day, she was an 18-year-old girl dating somebody in their mid-30s. And regardless of how mature she might have seemed when she was in that movie called 13, she's an 18-year-old girl. Like, she still is looking through things through, like, she's still young. I think she was like too young for how intense that relationship was, regardless of how much of an old soul she might have seemed to Marilyn Manson. And it's funny because there was like an album, I think, or a song that Marilyn Manson did that was very much inspired by Evan Rachel Wood while they were dating. And I think it was called Heart-Shaped Glasses. And in the video for the song, she has like the heart-shaped glasses and she had this Lolita look and everything. And it just goes along with the two aspects that she has that I think really symbolize to me what led to her relationship with Marilyn Manson and just how she is, which is her Mercury square Neptune. So her thought and communication is in tough aspect with illusion. And so that can lead to her being naive or using the way she can manipulate how she thinks and communicates to deceive others. It can go either way. And then her moon opposes her Venus. So her emotions could maybe get the best of her when she approaches love relationships. Like, she might be fooled in love, especially, or fooled in her connections. And then with her Saturn, she has a lot of, looking at her chart, she has quite a bit of tough aspects when it comes to her Saturn, a lot. Like, her sun is in tough aspect with Saturn, her moon, her midheaven, her Venus, her Mars. And Saturn represents restraint, but it also represents the father. So I would be surprised if she didn't have daddy issues. And when a lot of girls have daddy issues, they end up dating somebody that's like a father figure, like maybe a 36-year-old Marilyn Manson. And she probably got disillusioned by that. Whereas Taylor Swift processes that by doing All's Too Well, whatever that song is. Evan Rachel Wood is processing it by doing all the things she's doing right now. So is it warranted? Is it not? It's tough to say. I do think I think it wasn't the right relationship for her. But one thing that's interesting also is her moon aspects, which are very reminiscent of Amber Heard. So she has her moon opposing her Mars. So her emotions and taking action, just not in sync, or she has to balance the two. So that can make her very erratic with her moods, or maybe not being able to reconcile how she feels with what actions she should take. And then also her sun is opposing her moon. So that means she was probably born around a full moon or like on a full moon. I think Amber Heard also has her sun opposing her moon, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. So again, conflict between what to do, how you feel, like how you feel may not be how you're really portraying yourself. So that could lead to what you get with her. And then she has a lot of indications in her chart of wanting to be like a crusader for justice. So she has her stellium in Virgo, and Virgo is like a fixer-upper kind of sign, trying to help other people, but doing it in a way where like sometimes it isn't warranted. That's the difference between a Pisces. Like, a Pisces will give of themselves so much, and a Virgo also gives, but sometimes in a way that's unwarranted, like being critical. So that could be a good or a bad thing. Her Mercury's in Libra, so very much trying to express justice and diplomacy. Her Jupiter's in Aries, so that can make her want to be like a hero, a crusader. She has her sun right next to her Mars. I wish I had that. I don't think it's probably how she has been able to accomplish whatever she's been able to accomplish
I'm just gonna say no, I wouldn't want it just because sun eradicates any sign that it or planet that it's
That's
next
true.
to. So it irritates the Mars energy and it irritates even the Venus energy because it's right next to Venus. Luckily, Venus is after sun, but since Mars comes before the sun is burning the path for Mars and causing it to be a little bit more irritated and maybe come off a little bit not even debilitated, just too strong, like
Yeah.
way too intense. She might be someone who's OCD and wants things a certain way.
Mhm.
If it doesn't come out the way she wants, it's going to be a problem. But I did want to mention her North Node being in the fifth house in whole signs is exactly opposing Mercury. And
Mm.
that could be why she's really on this battle. Maybe she's trying to prove, whether it's to herself or others, that her allegations against Marilyn Manson are actually true.
Yeah.
Just because Mercury in the 11th house denotes someone who communicates a lot about their fame. And she might be, especially with Chiron in the 7th house, you're either regretting getting into a relationship or you don't feel that people are enough when you're in a relationship. And she might be the former of regretting the situation where your Marilyn Manson ex lover, why did you do that? And she's trying to prove to everybody, oh, I had to do it because maybe I was abused or something. Like these are
Mhm.
just my thoughts on that sort of energy between those three planets and what they're trying to say. And then the opposition energy, her North Node in fifth house in Aries, her claiming this abuse might have been the most convenient thing. And of course, Aries energy does not think about the consequences. North Node in Aries, being that you're only focused on yourself or only focused on the immediate future, you might not have thought that the things you were communicating would affect your fame because it's the 11th house also indicates fame.
Mhm.
So that opposition is going to be a problem in the long run.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, there's so many indications in her chart of her being this social justice crusader. Like her third house of communication has Aquarius on it. And Aquarius is very much the sign of utilitarianism and trying to speak for the people. Her ninth house of expanding horizons and philosophy has Leo on it. And Leo exaggerates anything that it's on, right? Because it's very much about being in the spotlight and me. Her Jupiter trine Neptune, that could make her be generous or wanting to help others. The intentions for that, unclear. And then her Mars is trine Neptune as well. So that could also make her very idealistic. Her planet of action is in flow with the planet of idealism. And so her Mars is conjunct her midheaven. Again, it's very close to the sun. So who knows how that's all relating, but that probably gives her a lot of drive in whatever she wants to achieve or drive in how she wants to be perceived by society, because the midheaven also represents your social status, how you're seen in society, your place in society. Her moon is in good aspect with Pluto, though, so that's promising considering her other tough aspects. And she also has a mystic rectangle, just like Marilyn Manson. I feel like this love affair that happened was like a meeting of the eighth house and a mystic rectangle. It'd be so interesting to do the synastry of that. But her mystic rectangle has her Jupiter, which gives her luck in whatever area it's in. It has her Chiron, which represents her inner wound. It has her Neptune, which represents illusions, whether the ones she perceives or the ones she creates, and her Pluto and Scorpio. According to Placidus house system, it includes her fifth of love, her seventh of relationship, her second of self-worth or financial worth, and her 11th house. I can see that all being a focus. The appeal that she has towards other people, how she's viewed by society, how she approaches relationships, her own self-worth, it all ties in together. So it could make her kind of self-absorbed in a sense, but self-absorbed in a way where she cares about how am I seen by other people? How am I seen by society? So that might be a bigger focus than what somebody would naturally assume of her. And then she has 3 different T-squares. So a lot of things that she has to balance in her life. And the things that provide balance out of the 3 T-squares that she has are her North Node soul purpose, overcoming her internal wounds over communication in regards to her relationships, and also her relationships. It's interesting because I think she's been single for quite a while. Unless I'm mistaken, she's dated people and she's obviously had this serious relationship with Marilyn Manson back in the day. And she was married to Jamie Bell and they got divorced. And I think she's had another boyfriend after that. But other than that, you don't hear much about her love life unless she keeps it private now. But yeah, lots of like, I feel like there could be a whole episode analyzing her. I think, are her intentions bad? I wouldn't say that she's this like vindictive, malicious person. But I do think she cares about her image more than she lets on. She wants to be this crusader, which is very similar to Amber Heard wanting to be a crusader. Evan Rachel Wood is a little more effective in how she communicates, actually a lot more effective than Amber Heard naturally in her natal chart. Evan Rachel Wood is able to get away with more with the things that she says because she's just better at communicating a message and making the right connections to get that support to communicate the message. But then again, I also don't think Marilyn Manson is innocent either. I think he just played with fire. He played with 18-year-old fire, and it's coming back to burn him. There's so many girls, women out there, men too, that enter tumultuous first serious relationships when they're in their late teens. And then it takes until your 20s and 30s to process it and be like, shoot, what did I do? And for some people, they just process it and move on. For other people, they go into therapy. For some people, they get into a rebound relationship, but with other people,
they claim that Marilyn Manson decided to abuse them throughout their relationship and try to use it to gain access to their child, etc. All these allegations that are going on with
so
that.
it's hard to know what's real.
But my verdict,
yeah,
but my verdict for this whole thing is Evan Rachel Wood is too focused on her career. She's too focused on her image. She probably believes that it was either a mistake or an error to be with someone who is so either controversial or maybe just perceived to be sexually just on the edge of what people accept. And whether it's for the vindictive nature of ending the relationship so long ago, or that he's finally happy and that, again, that Jupiter and Saturn connection that they have in the same sign of Aries, that his misfortune makes her happy. So I would say that this is either vindictive in nature or cleaning up her image in the past, like some sort of way of processing that she was with this person that she now feels disgusted by or didn't like to be with. And this is all my interpretation of her chart. She's focused on her image. She's focused on what she can gain from others. Their connection, their synastry connection is with Saturn and Jupiter and what one means to the other. And it's at the end of the day, what could be better than creating this sort of backwards type of energy? But hopefully it will come to light and be something positive for the both of them that they will be able to move on from. And I'm not going to, or have an agreement where he's not going to sue her, but she's not going to make any more false allegations. If they are false or any allegations whatsoever, because at the end of the day, she could end up in a worse situation if it's found out that, whether the documents are real or not, or whether he decides to sue her and it ends up being like a Johnny Depp case. It just goes on and on. These rabbit holes and the Me Too movement, the discrediting of the Me Too movement by so many women who decided to do this, especially in the high profile case of Amber Heard, and how just I feel like the media has been so defensive of her, and we've all found out the truth, and it's like we're supposed to pretend we live in an alternate reality where we can't watch cameras that show her cheating on him in an elevator. And I'm just like, I know they were separated, but it was literally the day before. Do you really think it wasn't going on 24 hours before? And it's just frustrating because I want to trust in whatever XYZ media is doing. And then the bigger question is, did it damage the image of an organization like the ACLU when it comes to Amber Heard? And is it going to damage the image of HBO because they're going to publish something that may be ultimately going to a court case? And we're going to get even more information that the HBO special might not be revealing. Do you want to end up in a defamation lawsuit with Marilyn Manson too? There's so many layers to what is going on in the world. And yes, there are people who abuse people, but any false allegation, any sort of doubt could lead to further investigation that shows ultimately to discredit people who are victims, to discredit people who have struggled with this type of issue. And what we want to do is make sure not to elevate people, Evan Rachel Wood, if it is turning out to be false, and definitely to have consequences for it, because it's just not right. It's not right, and it's not right for the people who are actually victims. It's not right for the people who have to go through this. Does he have to continue to deal with this for the rest of his life now because one person did this? And so I'm not a big defender of Marilyn Manson. I do not sit here and say, oh, I love his music, but I also am the type of person who likes to see both sides. Unfortunately, I have Mercury and Gemini. And so I can really sit here and say, fortunately and unfortunately. But I can really sit here and say there's more to Evan Rachel Wood than meets the eye.
Yeah.
So that's definite. And of course, with Marilyn Manson, he's not being totally honest about the type of sexuality or sexual nature he has, or even the type of personality that he is behind the scenes. So people are just looking at Marilyn Manson, who wears this caked on makeup and all of this crazy music that he's published and all these crazy music videos that we've been into for the last 20 years of his career. But then you see him and he's just a softie when it comes to his chart. You know what I'm saying? He's got a lot of indications of somebody who loves to be in love and
Yeah.
loves to go on the person that they're with and is very much spoiling them. And maybe Evan Rachel Wood misses that and was really angry that it ended. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so she's taking it out on him, like, my life has been shit since you left me. He's in a relationship now, and I don't know if he's married or not, but it all indicates that he would never get back with her because she had her own personality issues, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
that maybe he didn't accept. Because we'll see what
Yeah.
happens. And as soon as we get updates, we'll make sure to connect to this reading again. I've said it here that there's going to be further action against Evan Rachel Wood, and we're going to see the truth once it all comes out, and the truth will be revealed. You can't hide the truth. Hopefully, it won't be as public as Amber Heard's case, just because it doesn't help to have people who may be victims on the stand in front of everybody, super critical. Like, that was not a good look on our society. Even if it wasn't a good, even if it was a good outcome because the truth was revealed, but it's really not. It's ultimately court cases should be held at a higher standard than like us holding popcorn on the couch every afternoon.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
interesting thing too is, I guess the thing to watch out for in regards to Marilyn Manson is that I think around 2026, Saturn, I think, will be back in Aries. So that'll be Marilyn Manson's second Saturn return. And this whole defamation case against Johnny Depp happened during Johnny's second Saturn return. So it'll be interesting to see what the next 3 years or so bring to Marilyn Manson. And if something else comes to light, or if this whole thing with Evan Rich extends until that point and really gets heated at that juncture around 2026, 2027.
Exactly. So this has been the episode. It's been super exciting to do this analysis just because I was reading a lot about this special that's coming out on HBO apparently about the allegations. And of course, we're going to see what happens ultimately. I don't think it's just going to be Amber Heard that's going to be thrown into this defamation if Marilyn Manson is ultimately vindicated or not. We'll see. We're going to all find out the truth eventually.
So thank you all for listening. I hope this kind of shows the complexities that people have. Not everything is what it seems. And I think that's one of the great things that astrology provides as far as analyzing people. So we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.